Hi, my name is Clarence Ling, and welcome to this video by Class Digital Marketing. Today we're talking about Cloudflare, which is a content delivery network, a very popular content delivery network or CDN, that claims to improve your global response time by 10 times. We'll be briefly talking about one of the minor services that Cloudflare offers, which is called Railgun. And before we get into the flesh of this video, the meat of this video, I would like to give you a bit of background. Now, my web host announced recently that they will be decommissioning their Cloudflare integrations, including Cloudflare cPanel plugin and Railgun services. The reason why they're doing so is because the cPanel plugin is no longer being maintained by Cloudflare, and because of bugs and lack support they've received from Cloudflare, they've decided that it does not serve their customers' best interests to use Cloudflare or Railgun. In fact, in their independent testing, they find that for Australian visitors to Australian servers, the speeds increased from 0.86 seconds without Cloudflare to 2.14 seconds with Cloudflare enabled. So just to give you a context, this is an Australian context. I'm using an Australian web host with Australian servers in Sydney. And there's some more important information about here over here about Cloudflare Railgun. Cloudflare are no longer maintaining the API for managing hosting partners' Railgun connections, and this has led to a poor experience for our customers attempting to use the service, and so on. So, if you really want Railgun, you can't use the free option in your web host. It's no longer going to work very well. The only way you can get Railgun working properly is to pay for a 200 USD per month paid plan from Cloudflare. That's the only way you're going to be able to use the Railgun service properly, because Cloudflare is no longer maintaining the API right here. So let's get down to business and do some measurements and testing. Now, for the test website we're going to use a migration agency in Australia, and let's just see what the speed is if you have a website in Australia with an Australian server and web host with Australian visitors only. Now, this test was taken within Australia. It was taken in Sydney, and it has no Cloudflare, and the load time is 5.5 seconds. Now, in these tests, we are not going to pay so much attention to the fully loaded seconds, because there are lots of other factors that can affect fully loaded times. It's just easier for us to look at the document complete times only for now and for this video. Now, what happens if we have a partially zoned website, which is a website that uses the free version of Cloudflare and doesn't use Cloudflare DNS? It uses the web hosting DNS by the default DNS that come with your web hosting. This is what happens. Uh, from 5.5 seconds, the load time jumps to 7.2 seconds. That's almost 2 seconds slower. So we can tell that that the web host is right. Using Cloudflare is going to slow your service down significantly as an Australian client or business. Now, these results may vary across different countries or different cities, but for Australia, this is not good. And let's see what happens if we do full zoning on a free tier. The improvement is the speed is 5.9 seconds, or close to 6 seconds. It's an improvement about 1.2 seconds, which is not bad, but the 5.9 seconds here, 5.9 seconds here within Australia is still slower than the 5.5 seconds within Australia for a website without Cloudflare. So that's not good at all. That's not good at all. Now, this one here is this is a website that's fully zoned and using the lowest tier of the paid version of Cloudflare, the Pro version, and all the enhancements have been switched on for this website. And what you get is 5.6 seconds, which is not which is about the same as 5.5 seconds. But it's not great because there's not much difference. Now, the thing is this: you have to pay for Argo, a paid plan, a pro plan, and other costs just to get similar speeds to if you don't have Cloudflare. So what does this mean for you? It means that if you are running a local business that only cares about local traffic, you don't need Cloudflare if you're an Australian business. Now, it could be different if you are in another country with different infrastructure and different circumstances, but that's the deal with Australia. Now, there's a reason behind this, and the reason is this. For Cloudflare, the closest server to Australia is Singapore. So for so in the so in Cloudflare, what happens when you sign up for Cloudflare as an Australian business? Your traffic goes to Singapore, then goes back to Australia. That's very inefficient because the geographical distance between Singapore and Australia is great. So that's why it's faster to go without Cloudflare. But let's do a bit more testing and see more dimensions to this issue of Cloudflare. Now, this is the speed of Cloudflare in Singapore if you're using partial zoning, which means the cPanel Cloudflare plugin, and the free tier. The speed is 7.79 seconds, close to 7.6.8 seconds. Sorry, the speed is 6.7 seconds, close to 6.8 seconds, which is not much of an improvement from the 7.2 seconds here, and still slower than the 5.5 seconds. So what gives? So this means that the free plugin by Cloudflare and the free services by Cloudflare in your web host are not good. In fact, they're terrible and they don't deliver the speeds that you need. But let's dive deeper into the problem even further. What if you paid for everything and you routed the traffic through to Singapore? Paying for Cloudflare with full zoning gets you less than 4 seconds loading in Singapore. And that's even better than the load time in Australia. So if you want to use Cloudflare, the takeaway is this. Number one, you need full zoning. And number two, you have to pay for it, or else it won't be as good. Now let's look at this test here. This test here is what happens if you get full zoning. You get full zoning and you get full zoning and but you don't pay for the paid plan for Cloudflare. The load time is 5 seconds. That's actually still better than the Australian load time, but there's a significant difference between the paid version and the unpaid version. Now let's give a twist to this experiment and testing that I've been doing. This website here is a WordPress website. What happens if you change the content management system, the CMS? In this case, you'll be using a Joomla website. This is fully zoned, and all the enhancements in the Pro version have been used. The load time in this website is 5 seconds. Now, to give you an overview of how this website looks like, it's basically pretty simple as well, but it has a very slow loading chat box, which is powered by JavaScript and takes a really long time to load. That's why the load time here is 5 seconds. Now, what happens if we use this Joomla website, who's using full zoning and a paid version of Cloudflare? What will its speed be like in Singapore? It'd be like this. Less than 4 seconds as well, 3.9 seconds. So we can say that Cloudflare really does speed up your website, but it does depend on where you are and the infrastructure around you. Because if you're an Australian business that only has Australian clients, Cloudflare is not going to do you much good. But if you are an Australian business or any other business around the world, Cloudflare really speeds up the load time significantly. And there is another possible explanation to why uh, it's so much faster in Singapore than it is in Australia, and that simply is because of the internet infrastructure. Singapore is a city-state. The land mass is a lot smaller than Australia. Australia is a small continent, and Singapore is a small island. So perhaps one of the reasons why we're having this issue coming up or these results coming up is because the infrastructure in Singapore is just better. But however, you think of it in the global perspective, Cloudflare, despite the fact of slowing down your traffic in Australia, is still good because it gives you a faster time internationally, especially in Asia, where a lot of internet traffic will be going through Singapore. Now, I just want to test one more thing, and that is Railgun. Now, we haven't looked at Railgun at all, despite talking about it briefly here, but I want to show you something. Now, Railgun. Now, this is this. I'm looking for the partial zone website. Where? Oh, this is the wrong one. Partial zone website. Here. This is the partial zone website. Now, in this partially zoned website, the load time in Australia is 7.2 seconds. And now we switched on Railgun. What will be the speed? This is the result. Uh, for a partially zoned website with the free tier loading within Australia with Railgun, this is the speed right here. 6.6 seconds. It's an improvement about half a second from without Railgun. But you have to note that it's still bloody slow it's still really slow compared to for the Australian traffic compared to the website without Cloudflare. So in the Australian context, this is a summary. If you only have Australian clients, don't bother using Cloudflare. If you have international clients, use Cloudflare, but you probably have to pay to get comparable speeds within Australia. Now, if you are a business outside of Australia, it really depends, but I believe that Cloudflare is still an effective CDN, content delivery network, because it can deliver you really, really good speeds internationally, depending on where you're testing. So that wraps it up. I hope you've learned a lot about Cloudflare and its speed enhancement capabilities, and I hope that you take away a few thoughts about whether and how to use Cloudflare for your website performance in terms of speed. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed this video by Class Digital Marketing.